Greetings and salutations. Welcome to this episode of Playwright Spotlight. Before we begin, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment down below, and share this channel with a friend. If you're listening to us on your favorite podcast platform, be sure to leave a 5-star review and subscribe to the channel. My guest today is a Mexican playwright and screenwriter based in Los Angeles. He is the winner of the 2021 Smith Prize for Political Theater. His play, The Play You Want, won the 2020 BETC Generations Award and was also a finalist for the 2020 Ingenio Play Festival. His play, The Giant Void in My Soul, was nominated for Best Playwright in the 2018 Ovation Awards, Los Angeles Drama Critics Circle Awards, and the Stage Raw Awards. His play, Neighbors, A Fair Trade Agreement, will be receiving its world premiere at the INTAR, I should say received its world premiere at the INTAR in New York City in the fall of 2017. It was a semifinalist for the O'Neill in 2017, and his play, The Judgment of Fools, has received 3 critically acclaimed productions in New York, LA, and Houston, Texas. His play, The Redhead is Coming, was part of Fuckfest at the Brick in New York City in 2015. And he is a proud member of Ammo Theater Company in LA. I'm assuming that's still active. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Bernardo Cubria.
Thank you for having me. And yes, we are still active.
Okay.
Ammo is still alive, yes.
Okay, I'm glad to hear it. So, I want, like, the first place I want, because this is something we haven't covered yet in anything, the O'Neills. So,
yeah.
Tell me about this process, about how it went, how far you, like, when did you, like, how did you submit? When did you submit? How far along the process? Like, oh, I'm going to send my first draft, and then they tell you to work on it. How does this all work as far as the O'Neills go?
So, you know, I don't have much to say except that I was one of those playwrights who I think is called playsubmissionhelper.net. I don't know if you've heard of this website, but I used to spend a lot of time on there when I was starting out. And you just submit your play to everything, and you send it everywhere, and you're just trying to get somebody to like your play, to read it, maybe even possibly produce a reading or, oh my God, a production. And so I just submit my play to the O'Neill every single year, you know, when I started writing plays. And Neighbors made it to be a semifinalist. And the truth is, I probably should have thought about that, but I always would just submit whatever play I was working on that year in whatever condition it was by the time the deadline came around, right?
Right. Keep going. Sorry.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, because I also, by the way, I think like at some point you just got to start sending it out, you know, and just send your plays out. Like hope that somebody will give you a workshop or a reading so that you can improve it, you know.
So the O'Neill is a, they charge a submission.
Yes. $35. I
okay.
think, yeah.
Were you paying for any other festivals or any other?
Oh, dude, I used to spend so much money on submitting my plays. I mean, because some places are crazy. It's like a tiny little theater somewhere you've never heard of, and they'll charge you $75. But when I was starting out, I was just like, I will literally send my play to any theater company in the world, you know?
Sure.
On playsubmissionhelper.net or whatever, sometimes you're like submitting to Australia or, you know, the UK. You're just like, fuck it. I don't care if anybody, you know. Can I curse on this podcast?
Absolutely. Okay, I don't think we have a choice since we did Fuckfest at the Brick in New York City.
Yes. So yeah, man, I would just submit it. And luckily that year it made it to be a semifinalist, but I've never gotten in as a playwright. I had the honor 2 years ago to direct a play that was at the O'Neill that Carla Ching wrote. Called Revenge Porn or Story of a Body, which is an amazing play that everybody should produce. And Ammo, the theater company I'm a part of, we gave the world premiere of that play last year. So I got to be there as a director, and it's a really cool experience, yeah.
So how many times did you submit to the O'Neill before you... I mean, I don't know what the stages are for the O'Neill, so I don't know. It's like, hey, you're a semifinalist, and then... Do you go to finalists? I mean, how does...
Yeah, so that's, I think if I remember correctly, you submit, and then they choose like 50 plays to be semifinalists, and then 5 get chosen for the festival. It's something like that. I think every year has probably been a little different, but... So I think that was probably the 4th play I had submitted to that festival, you know, or the 3rd, yeah.
Did you ever resubmit, or did it just like, all right, this one didn't get in, let's move on to something else?
I have never resubmitted, because to be totally honest, I lose interest in my plays very quickly. I will never have a play that I've been working on for 5 or 6 years. Like that's not my approach to it. I had a teacher in college who would say, you know, you have to finish your plays quickly because you're going to be a different person by the time you finish it. And so, Sorry for sneezing.
That's okay. Forgive me for not using that.
No, it's fine. It's totally fine. I'll tell you next time. No, but so I don't really, I'm not one of those people who has a play on my laptop that I go back to for 3 or 4 years. Like what I would do, I don't know that this is the way that anybody should approach their career, but what I would do is I would spend a year on a play. I would submit it to all the things, and then hopefully it would get like a reading or a production, and then probably the next year I would write a new play. I
wish I was that committed and lucky.
Yes, luck is a huge part of it.
Well, it's really discipline for me, because I mean, I will let stuff sit and simmer, and like I'll revisit it, and I've been working on the screenplay for 24 years.
Sure. Yeah. You know? Well, so I will say, when I became a playwright, I came to this, I started as an actor, and I took a class in New York when I was living there at the Labyrinth Theater Company. And a playwright, David Barkatz, who's amazing, who was the co-writer of Freak with John Leguizamo, he gave us a class, and one of his sort of challenges to us was, this weekend, on Friday, go to your favorite liquor store, buy a bottle of booze that you like, and then lock yourself in your apartment, turn off your cell phone, which is a key part of this thing, and on Sunday night, write end of play. And the rule is you're not allowed to rewrite at all. You just start and you finish. And that kind of approach to writing is really works for me. I'm not saying other people, it works for everyone, but for me it's really helpful to not give myself the excuse to like leave something to die on a laptop, right? Because the more that I step away from it, the more that I will step away from it. Does that make sense? And not return to it.
Yeah.
And so I try to write a first draft really quickly now. Like I'll give myself a week max to write a first draft of anything. And it's really bad, by the way. It's a really, really bad thing. But I get to the end, and now I have this thing that I can rewrite, workshop, you know, and try to make better. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, 100%. Yeah. How much do you still buy the bottle of booze?
I do. I have 2 children now, so my relationship to writing at night, by the way, I used to only write at night. I don't know about you, but I used to only write late at night, like midnight to 6 a.m. And when I was in New York, I'd like smoke cigarettes and drink, because that's what I thought writers had to do. And now I think that's all very silly. And then I had kids, and so now I have to have like a more disciplined approach to, you know, I write at 9 a.m. now. I'm not having breakfast at 9 a.m. I'm like, you know, having coffee and a sensible breakfast, because I'm 40 years old now, right?
Sure.
But at that point, when I was 24 and took that class in New York, I was like, yeah, man, I'm going to get that booze and, you know, be an artist, you know, that kind of thing.
You know, then there was the reason I'm like, are you still doing it? And if so, how much does that booze really affect your writing towards like, wait, what did I write last night?
Yeah. I mean, I will say, even with or without booze, if you really commit to just like going through the muck and allowing yourself the shitty 2-hour period and staying in it, there are moments where you're just kind of in a flow state, and then you really don't know what you wrote, you know? I have gone back to rewrite, like reading a first draft. I'm like, what the fuck is this scene, you know?
Right.
Usually because it's terrible, but you're just like, wow, like, you know, if you really stay in it and force yourself to stay in it, it's like meditation or something, right?
Sure.
You really can just like keep going, and it's all about not judging yourself, you know, because I do that all day to myself about how I interact with human beings, how I am as a parent. And so the less that you can be doing that while you write, I find is the best when I feel I'm most creative. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Yeah.
So you go through, well, actually, no, before I get to that, outside of a cool way to write and discipline yourself, what else did you take away? I mean, I'm assuming this is, obviously you've got your acting under your belt and stuff like that, but is this the first acting or playwriting workshop you've ever taken? This one that you had done that learned this technique?
Yeah.
What else did you learn, or what else did you take away from this particular class or workshop?
So probably the most important, I don't know, I mean, but one of the most meaningful lessons I have received from a teacher is, so he's a friend of mine now and a mentor. Brett C. Leonard is this amazing playwright who's also from Labyrinth Theater Company. And he has this sort of philosophy on playwriting, right? Which is, you know, maybe you sit down and you're going to write a story about two guys and they're driving to the Grand Canyon, right?
Okay.
And that's what you sat down to write. But you have to allow yourself that if somehow on the drive you see a sign for the world's biggest ball of yarn and you turn right and then you never make it to the Grand Canyon because one of the characters falls in love in that little town and dies there, that's okay. Like, you don't have to reach the thing that you outlined or that you planned. Like, you have to allow yourself the freedom of play, I think is what that's all about. And that really spoke to me when he said that, right? And I think that's why even in the sort of like, I'm trying to get a first draft out quickly, it's all about being on that road trip and not being like, wait, but 3 weeks ago in my car, I decided that the ending is this, right? You know, sometimes, yeah, that's very important and it's a way to execute your writing, but to give yourself that freedom on that road trip has been incredibly helpful to me, you know?
Once you get that first draft done, what's your next step? Where do you go from there?
So usually a lot of self-loathing and fear and doubt, and that's all true. But no, what I usually do is I will then invite, you know, my 5 favorite friends who are, I think, intelligent artists, you know, of all walks of life, and I'll have them over and we'll do a reading, you know, and then I'll ask for feedback. And I will say, when I was a younger playwright, that group was really big, and I would invite as many people as possible. And then I fucked up a lot of my plays because I was taking everyone's notes because I like to be liked, and this is a disease I suffer from. And now I have like my crew of people that I really trust who give really smart, intelligent feedback, I think. And, you know, without that crew of people, I don't know what kind of writer I would be, because they're the ones who make everything better, you know, and honestly give me ideas that I just steal, you know.
What is smart, intelligent feedback?
I think that's a really good question. I mean, I think it's the same for criticism, or you have to try to analyze what the artist is after, not what you would do, right?
When you say the artist, the person giving the critique,
if your friend, if you invited me over, right, and you wrote a horror play, I wouldn't then try to tell you how I would write your play.
Okay.
I have to help you understand if you're executing the thing that you're attempting to do, right? It's like when I read a review of a film, a lot of times I'll get really frustrated with the critic because they're getting upset that the movie isn't a different kind of movie, right? It's like, no, this movie is meant to be a feel-good family movie. So why are you criticizing it like it's Citizen Kane or, you know, Blue Valentine? Like, it's like, analyze it in that term, right? And I think really good feedback is people who are, what is your intention? What are you trying to say with this play? Oh, well, you're not doing that in this moment because of X, Y, and Z. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Is there any point, like when you were getting the bad feedback, where you're just like, do you know when you're getting bad feedback where you can just automatically brush it off, or do you still take it into consideration?
I mean, when I was young, I took everything personally, and it all hurt, and I would take all of it into consideration. I think the older I've gotten, the better I am at figuring out, you know, oh, that's interesting, but that actually doesn't help me. You know, I think I'm much better now at, you know, like there's that feedback technique, Liz Lerman, that maybe some of your listeners know, but
for those who may not, let's hear it.
Okay, cool. So it's this technique that I learned at the Lark in New York, which sadly is no longer existent, but was like a really amazing playwright development center in New York City. And they would always do this thing called Liz Lerman, which I love. And the steps are, 1 is popcorn, which is people just say things that popped for them after hearing your script. 2, you ask very specific questions to the people you've invited about your piece, and people are only allowed to answer that question. They're not allowed to go on tangents about other things. Then 3, they can ask you questions, and what's really tricky about this is they have to be actual questions, not like a note hidden behind a fake question. Does that make sense? And then the last step is opinions. And when you really go Liz Lerman hardcore, and some people make fun of this because it's very sensitive and very theater, they will say like, I have an opinion about your podcast. Would you like to hear it? And you're allowed to say, no, I don't want to hear that fucking opinion about that part of the play because I'm not working on it, right?
Sure.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I will say Liz Lerman early in my career was super helpful because I was much more sensitive, much more insecure. And so I still like Liz Lerman, by the way. I think it's a great way to receive feedback and to control feedback. But now I think I'm better at just receiving everyone's overall notes, because I think I'm better at being like, very quickly, oh, that person, their sort of understanding of what this thing is, they don't get it, and so I don't really care what they have to say about it. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Yeah.
Let's go back to number 2. After popcorn, you said something about specific
questions.
Do you have an example of what a specific question would be?
Sure. I'll think of something I'm writing now, right? Like, do you think that the play lags on page 45, right? Or do you think that the main character's intentions are clear? Do you think our antagonist, you know, is too two-dimensional? Something like that. And then they're only answering a very specific question that you have. Does that make sense?
Yeah. All right.
And then if they start on something else, if you have a good person who's leading Liz Lerman, they'll like stop them. They'll go, thank you for that. We'll get to that later. And then you kind of brush that aside.
So is this...
I'm leading a Liz Lerman workshop. This is amazing. Yeah.
That's all right. Because again, this is the brilliant thing about this, because every episode covers something that nobody's mentioned this before.
Yeah. Oh, really? Oh,
no,
cool.
we haven't covered the ideas. We haven't covered, So it's just like, oh, who is she?
Yeah.
And how's it work? So I want to kind of go back a little bit, because like, it seems like it's one workshop and now I know all this stuff, and now did you ever do any other workshops? Or just like you just started and just like, now I know what I have to do?
I haven't taken a lot of quote unquote writing classes, but I was a theater actor for, 15 years of my life. Sure. And I do think where I learned the most was what is my favorite part of theater still, by the way. Like, this is my favorite thing about theater, is that first week. I loved it as an actor the most, when you all sit around the table and you're just making the thing better, and you're talking about it, and it's you and your pals and your friends, and everyone is just after the same goal, which is we want to tell the best story possible. And I think you learn a lot about writing doing that, even as an actor or as a stage manager. Just being in the room and watching plays grow, I think, was a huge education for me, like, about writing. Does that make sense?
Can you pinpoint anything in particular that you really like, that clicked going through that process?
Honestly, working with amazing playwrights. I was really lucky. When I lived in New York, I worked with people who are still some of my heroes, like Mondo Alvarado and Tanya Saracho and Matthew Paul Olmos and Fernanda Coppel, and these amazing, playwrights that just being around them, you're watching how they work on their pieces, right? Like Mondo, for example, who's one of my favorite playwrights, and if people haven't read them, please look him up. I mean, and produces plays. But the way he approaches rewrites in the room is so exciting, because he really is there to make it better and not to defend. And so you will literally be in the room watching him rewrite and then redoing the scene, and you're just watching it grow. And you're watching how he takes the notes from the actors in the moment and improves the story that he's trying to tell, And that's the most, to me, that's like, fuck yeah, that's the best part of theater, is we're all making this better. Like, that is when it's not about ego and it's not about someone's feeling insecure that day, or, that's like why I still will do it till the day I die. That's my favorite thing to be a part of,
So you don't, when you got your friends, you've done your first draft, you've got your friends, you haven't rewritten anything yet. No. You're just taking that first draft. No matter how good or bad it is, you just take it. Wrote something. It's done. I hit end play. Now, and then what's the next step from there?
Rewrite, And I will say, the longer I take to rewrite after that day where I get feedback from my friends, I'm fucked. Because I'm forgetting the moment and the energy of that day, right? Like, I find that if I do a read-through of a play, I need to start rewriting 2 or 3 days later, right? Maybe not the exact next day, but I need to stay in the zone and in the feeling of not only the writing of it, but also how people reacted to it, So it can be fresh and I can really attack it,
How do you stay the course? How do you not get distracted by, procrastinating and not getting back to it?
Well, I procrastinate very well. I'm very good at this. I've watched every episode of Hot Ones ever on YouTube. If you haven't watched it, it's where celebrities eat chicken wings and they get progressively spicier. This is my favorite thing to procrastinate to. I'm also now addicted to TikTok. I'm a 40-year-old who discovered TikTok 5 years after the world did. So I definitely do a lot of that. But the truth is, look, having kids and getting married, it just, like, when I first started writing plays, I was broke in New York. I had a shitty side hustle job, right? And I had so much time, and I didn't realize how much time I had. You know what I mean? Like, when you're first starting out, you just don't realize that really your life is not that hard. And that the things that you have to answer to were so minuscule, especially when I first got to New York, that, you know, I can't even imagine what I did with all that time. And now I have 3 hours in a day to write, honestly, you know, between my kids and my job. And, you know, I don't have that much time to actually sit down to write. So what I've learned is to let go of this false notion, for me, everybody's different, that I have to be quote unquote inspired to start writing. Like, I can be in a bad mood, I can not want to write, but as soon as you start, then you enter the flow state. And sometimes you have to fucking write an hour of really bad shit that you're gonna erase, but you have to have that discipline, because the more you do it, by the way, the quicker you enter that creative state again, right? And when I was younger, I was always like waiting to watch a great film to start writing, and I just don't have the time to do that anymore, you know.
Are you writing with a program? You're writing longhand?
Oh, just Word. Plays on Word. I still do Word. People make fun of me, but I love Word. I still write plays on Word, and then, you know, screenplays and TV on Final Draft. Yeah.
So when you're going through and you're forcing yourself to write, no matter how bad it is, do you just go ahead and erase, or do you just stick with it and then move on? I'm trying to understand or envision exactly how you're doing these rewrites.
Totally.
You know, from how I approach it, you know, because like I'll go to, you know, right now, like with one particular play I've gotten, I'm like, I need to get back to this, you know, because all of a sudden the wheels start turning.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, yeah. I think I've got it. I know what needs to be fixed or whatever. And I start back, and then it's like, I kind of lost interest.
Yeah.
So do you just keep, I mean, are you rereading and then I'm going to fix that, I'm going to tweak that and then keep moving? Or it's like, oh, I'm going to keep expanding on the scene?
So when I do a rewrite, I just go page by page. And sometimes it'll take me 3 days on one page, right? But I just go line by line. I think because you're an actor also, right? So
yes,
that when I'm reading it, I'm performing the parts in my head, and I can feel when it doesn't fit. Like if I divorce myself as writer and I think as actor, right? That helps. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll just pretend I'm cast in one of the roles and go through the script that way and try to understand what it is to play that role, right? And that's really helpful too, because sometimes you'll unlock something for a different character just because you're like, wait, with that fucking character, like why would he respond this way? He hasn't spoken in 8 pages. I didn't realize that, you know, that kind of thing. Or she hasn't, you know. But yeah, the rewriting is much more tedious, you know, much more sort of rethinking, you know, self-doubt, all of that. But again, I think, you know, this is for friends of mine who are listening to this, they'll laugh that it took me this long to bring up that I went to clown school, but I'm going to bring it up that I went to clown school, because to me, that kind of training, that kind of clown theater training, it goes at the same thing that I'm talking about that resonated with me with David Barkatz and Brett C. Leonard, which is you have to stay in the shit. Like my clowning teacher, this man, Antonio Fava, very interesting Italian man, he used to say, he would get very mad at people when they were improvising on stage and they would quit. It wasn't working, it was going bad, and then they would just like stop and look up at him like, can you please let me off the stage? And he would yell, stay in the shit, because to him, that's where the magic happens. You really got to be okay with the fact that it really sucks right now. And the more that you're okay with it and you stay in it, that's where I find, as an actor, as a performer, even in life, the best things come out of that, right? Because I'm not sitting in self-loathing and judgment. I'm like almost relishing that it kind of sucks, you know? I mean, like, it's okay. It's just not working right now, you know?
Is that yeah? I mean, is that because you know it's temporary, and you've kind of you gotten to a point of self-awareness that, or a Buddhist moment where you know everything is temporary?
I mean, yes. I think the way I think of it is that's a better way probably to say it, but to me, it's really not that important. Like when you really think about it, it's just a play, you know, like. It means so much to me. I care so much. But sometimes I zoom out and I'm like, there are 20 people in this audience. I texted all of them 7 times for them to be here. Like, if they kind of think it's okay, it really doesn't matter. because I get to go home to my wife and my kids who I love and I adore, and like, it's okay. You know, I can't fix the scene today. I'm not a terrible person. I just was shitty at writing today. You know, it's really not that important. You know what I mean?
At what point do you know, oh, that's good, that's gold, I hit the mark?
It's interesting. I mean, I think I know that during readings, public readings, or with my friends. And because I'm a whore for laughter, like that's all I want is to hear people laughing. That's how I know they like me, and I really like that feeling. You know, that's the most exciting part, is when, like, for example, I don't usually do this, but for our theater company, for Ammunition Theater Company, check out our website, support us, donate online. We just had a fundraiser for our theater company, and we did a moth storytelling night, and I wrote a story for it. And the whole way to the theater, I kept saying to my wife, this is a huge mistake. This story sucks. What am I doing? I'm panicking. I haven't performed in so long. Like, why did I sign up to do this? Just because there's a writer's strike and I'm bored. I made a mistake. I made a mistake. But then the moment that the first joke, quote unquote, landed with the audience, and I heard that response, then you go, oh yeah, it works. This story works. That one moment of confidence I had in front of the computer, oh yeah, I was right about that, right? And then sometimes, by the way, you're like, here comes the big laugh, and it dies. And then you just have to go, it's fucking okay. You just got to change that line. You got to fix it, you know? Just go make it better.
Do you consider writing a moth story a form of playwriting?
I don't know. I don't do it enough, you know? I think it's all kind of the same. Like, it's storytelling, and it was really cool and fun to try. I don't think it's what I want to do with my life, you know, or try to pursue to make a living with it. But for someone who used to be an actor and kind of left it for many reasons, I think what was most fun was to force myself to perform again, just to remind myself that, oh yeah, there were parts of that you loved, you know? And it's okay to still like want to feed that part of yourself, you know? Does it make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How much, let me think of the correct way, or how much does your ethnicity come into your writing?
Oh, I mean, I think my identity as a person and my understanding of it on that day, right? You know, it's who I am. I mean, I grew up in a Mexican home speaking in Spanish. My father and my mother are like deeply Mexican people. I don't know how to explain that, but they just are. I feel deeply quintessentially Mexican and very proud to be that. And so, of course, it's a part of my writing, you know, in ways that I don't even think you fully understand. Like, for example, when I went to clown school, I will mention it again. Everyone can turn off the podcast at this point. But when I went to clown school, it felt like, oh, yeah, I know this shit because I grew up watching Mexican TV. Like, I grew up watching El Chavo del Ocho. That is clowning. I just didn't know it was called that. But when this Italian man was like, we used to do this in Italy, I was like, oh yeah, I grew up watching. I love this shit, you know? I don't even need you to really explain it, because now I go, oh, I'm kind of an expert. It's not really, but you know what I mean? Your soul is like, I grew up on this shit. I love this stuff, you know? And so when I write, I think no matter what the subject matter is, it is in many ways deeply Mexican and deeply Texan, because I grew up in Texas, and deeply a middle child because I'm a middle child, and deeply a husband and a father. You know, like, I think all of your identity is a part of your writing. Don't you find that for yourself also? Or
oh, sure, absolutely. I'm always tapping into something, and I'm sure that there's some subconscious aspects of my past that I'm tapping into that I may not even realize.
Totally,
you know. And I suppose I'm, you know, going into the Smith Prize for Political Theater. I'm just curious if any of your background and identity in that is where the politics come into play, just out of curiosity.
Yeah, so I grew up in a home where politics was discussed all the time, you know? My father cared a lot about politics, about the news. We would discuss it at home. We would get in very heated arguments. I remember when I was a kid, my dad was a Ronald Reagan supporter, and as young as I was, I felt like I didn't like that, you know? My father is now a recovering Republican, as he says, and he's a Democrat now. But, you know, there was that conversation was always being had at my house. And then especially in summers in Mexico, politics was just like the norm. And people would yell about politics and people cared about it. So I've always cared about politics. I still do, you know. I definitely, you know, lost myself a little bit those 4 years during Trump's presidency and was on Twitter too much and yelling at strangers in Kentucky, and I regret all of that behavior. But politics is always a part of my writing, whether it is, you know, a surface level about politics or not. But, you know, it just is because, you know, I mean, Edward Albee used to say that all plays are political. I don't really know what that means. It just sounds like a smart quote. But I think that I care about politics. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Sure. And so, I mean, do you always take an approach that there's a message behind it? Is there a political message in all your work? Or
I think what I'm most interested in, and again, I hate to keep bringing it up, but it goes to my love of clowning, is making fun of power structures and pissing and shitting all over the king. Like, whatever the king is, whether that's the American theater or that is racism or that is whatever an unfair power structure is out there, I have great interest in making fun of it and mocking it. I love satire, you know? And so that is what I think moves me, is a lot of my plays have come from being deeply hurt by something in my life and then writing with rage, and then I feel more powerful when the rage becomes me making fun of it and laughing at it and then sort of pantsing it. Does that make sense?
I think so. But and so now I'm curious, how do you write satire in a play?
Well, I mean,
is there a formula? How do you approach this? How do you
So again, it's all feeling. I don't know that I do it well or not, right? Like, the last play that was produced here in LA that I wrote was called The Play You Want. It was done at the Road Theater, and it's about a playwright named Bernardo. You'll have to figure out if it's autobiographical at all. And he's really pissed off that the American theater only wants sort of plays about identity and about narcos and about Day of the Dead. And so he jokingly pitches a play called Narcocos, which is about narcos on Day of the Dead. And the public theater picks it up and it gets rushed to production, and then it goes to Broadway. And it's a satire of the American theater, right? And so what did I do? I probably subconsciously was ripping off the producers because I love that movie and I watched it with my parents when I was a kid. But I was writing sort of my anger about being a Mexican playwright and how so much of the rejection I've received in my career has been, oh, like, we like this play, but it's not Latino. It's not Mexican. And I'm like, well, I wrote it, so it is those things. But I've been told a lot of my writing is not, quote unquote, of Latino theme or whatever. I've heard it in many different worded ways, and that pisses me off. I think it's bullshit. I think it's racist. And so I went out to make fun of it, you know? And I will say, when it stopped being an angry play and became like me making fun of it, I felt very powerful. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Like I was clowning. Does that make sense? Yeah.
And since on that note, you brought it up again, because we talked about how the workshop helped you. I want to know specifically, not just staying in the shit. I want to know exactly how clowning helped you as far as your playwriting goes.
It honestly is the most important thing that I studied for my art, like for anything that I do. And I think, again, it goes to this desire to not judge. Like, the entire point of that kind of performance or art form is to play and to be as childlike as possible. You know, the way that my 5-year-old son Diego plays, right? Like, right before I came here to do this interview with you, my son was playing this game where he was a red shark that had human arms. And my son did not judge this choice. I don't think that is a very good character. I think my son, I have notes from my son. He did not. He just fully embraced that he was red shark with human arms. And there was no hesitation ever from him in our play, right? And to me, that kind of training is about returning to that. And I think when you can be in that space as a writer, it's really helpful to just play and not be thinking about, well, you know, in Save the Cat, they say that on page 45, you need an important line, whatever. Mm-hmm. All of that, yes, is helpful, but I think sometimes really gets in the way of discovery and fun. And that's what that training, I think, really changed in me. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And so, I mean, it sounds like it sounds like a form of yes and.
Yeah.
As far as from the improv world. But, I mean, is that what it is to mean? Is that what it means to play in playwriting? To just not judge and just whatever that choice that you just made, just go with it and stay with it no matter,
yeah,
you know?
I mean, most of the scenes that I've written that I like the most, I never thought of before I was writing them. They were improvised, you know?
Sure.
I've also, by the way, written so many really shitty scenes that way also. But it's about being in that moment so deeply that you, oh, fuck, you discover it. You're like, I didn't know that this guy was going to walk on stage, or this woman is now in this play. I didn't know. Oh, fuck, let's go follow that. And sometimes you're like, oh, actually, that's what this play is about, you know? I don't know if I'm answering your question, but it's just about not being in your head so much. I think because when you're in your head, you fuck up a lot of things. You get in the way of so much, you know? And as someone who has a lot of self-doubt and self-criticism, it's not helpful to me, you know?
Have you read Stephen Pressfield?
No.
Okay. So
what is that?
Stephen Pressfield wrote, his first book was The War of Art.
Okay.
And then he followed that up with Turning Pro, Do the Work, and then followed it with Nobody Wants to Read Your Shit. And so basically his thing is sit down, force yourself to write, and the muses will come to you and feed you. It's basically another form of flow.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious if that's what it is. Are you tapping into the muses, or the muses tapping into you? And when you show up, they'll be there when you show up. But
yeah, and I think the more you show up, right, the more opportunity you have for them to show up, right? Yeah. Because trust me, I have days where I'm 8 hours in front of a computer, nothing happened, you know?
Except TikTok.
Oh, yeah. And a lot of hot ones that I rewatch because they're great. Or Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee. Love that show. I'll watch that all day. Or clips of Norm Macdonald telling jokes. I will watch that all day. But yeah, the more you do it, the more disciplined you are. It's like, that's why athletes talk about this all the time. Like, if you're in the gym shooting three-pointers every day, then when it's the NBA Finals and it's Game 7 and you're Ray Allen and the ball's been tipped out to you, he hits the shot. Why? Because he spent 20 years of his life shooting that exact shot, you know? If he had not, he probably misses that shot, no matter how gifted he was to be born. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Sure. Not to support your distractions by any means.
No, let's talk about them, please.
Do you find, have you ever been so distracted you've gone down that rabbit hole of TikTok and hot ones and comedians and coffee, comedians, cars getting coffee, that all of a sudden it's like, oh, I have a brilliant, that just inspired me. I can go back because that idea just clicked.
Usually those things don't lead to inspiration. Usually those things are kind of giving my brain like a little break. And then I have to like restart again. Does that make sense?
So you don't recommend going those rabbit holes?
No,
they don't help.
I think they're a part of writing. I definitely think procrastination and like calling your friend out of the blue for no reason, I think all of that is part of it, right? It's your brain taking little breaks, you know? But the more that you can make those not necessary, the better, I think, you know?
Right. You said you've written some really shitty scenes.
Oh, yeah. And plays, by the way.
Well, how do you know? How do you know that they're not good and they're, you know, that you wrote shit?
Well, that's a great question, because some of them I delete before anybody ever hears them, right? Usually the way I actually know is by having them played in front of an audience. And then, you know, I am someone who probably in another life would have been a stand-up comedian, and I wish that I'd been brave enough and started when I was...
It's not too late.
I know people say that, but I have 2 kids. If I said to my wife, hey, honey, it's Tuesday, I'm not going to put the kids down with you because I'm going to Yuck Yucks in Glendale, and I have to pay for 4 drinks, I think, you know, I don't know how excited she would be about that new career prospect. But I love stand-up, and I listen to podcasts with them, and I find the art form fascinating. You know, that's what they do. They are okay with failing, and they go out every night and they try it. And when it bombs, they start changing the words, right? It's rewriting until, oh, fuck, now that joke works. Why? Because I changed 2 words, right? And then they try it again. Oh, fuck, it's still killing. It's still killing. Now it works. Now it belongs in the special. Does that make sense?
100%. And so now I want to, we'll use the term "call you out."
Okay, great. Call me out, please.
Because you said you delete things before anybody, but that's
judging myself.
Yes, but you didn't give the audience a chance to laugh or not.
Yeah, you're 100% right. But I guess then you are also the audience, right? And sometimes I will read it again.
That's a cop out.
It probably is. I mean, look, Let me be very clear. I am going to contradict myself many times throughout this episode.
Oh, I've done it every single episode. Don't you worry.
These are the feelings I have today about art, right? I will actually say, speaking of lessons you've gotten, one of the best theater directors I ever worked with as an actor, this man named Kwame, who is an amazing director, he had this rule. And his rule in the room, he would say, okay, welcome to rehearsal. There are 2 rules in the room, right? And I'm just going to share this because I think it's like very smart and there's a lot of wisdom to it. One is, don't take any negativity home. If you're feeling bad, if you're feeling upset, if you're mad at me, especially the director or one of your castmates, let's solve it in the room. Don't start calling other people in the cast on your way home. Don't do that because it creates a negative energy that's going to fuck up the play. And that, by the way, is very, very true. And 2, he has this thing, it's called the rule of today. And he's like, today, I may say to you, this play is about betrayal, and that's what this play is about, and I know it, and fuck all of you for thinking that, you know, it's about something else. And I'm allowed tomorrow to show up and go, guys, this play's not about betrayal. It's about fidelity, right? And I think that's, as artists, you know, what I believe today, tomorrow I may have a very different opinion on, you know? Yeah.
I'm right there with you because I've, you know, if I guest direct or something like that, or any direction that I do, I mean, look, I may contradict myself. I may say this, and and you may say, well, you told me that. I know. I completely did 100%, but either one of 2 things. It's not working. Yeah. Or I wasn't expressing it the way I thought I was, and I need to flip the script.
No, or 3, I was wrong, right? When I've directed, I haven't done that much, but when I have directed, many times I will ask an actor, no, do it this way. And in my body in that moment, I'm certain that's the way they should be, he or she should be performing the scene, right? And then I watch and I go, oh, dude, I'm sorry, I fucked you up. Let's go back to the way you were doing it, right?
Yeah. How does that play into your writing?
Again, I mean, you have to be okay with the fact that today you may be right, you may be wrong, right? You just have to let go, you know? I am working on this. It's why I go to therapy, but you kind of have to release yourself of the sort of preciousness and the importance of all of it, right? What's so difficult is, and you have to approach it with the utmost seriousness, and you have to care so much about it, and it has to be life or death to you. But then you have to understand it's just a fucking play.
Right.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
I'm going to go back a little bit because back when you were starting, or when we started the conversation, you were submitting to everything, you were paying for it. And this is a conversation that's come up in a couple episodes, and I think even the last episode or 2 episodes ago, about paying for submitting plays.
Yeah.
Which you seem not to have an issue with. Now, do you still feel that way?
No.
Or have you're established enough that you don't have to?
Well, here's the truth. It's not that I didn't have an issue with it. I mean, by the way, when I was doing that, I was really broke, my friend. You know, for most of my career, I woke up every morning and would look at my phone and be like, please, Chase, don't have a ding that I owe you $32. You know, that was the reality of being an artist for at least the first 10 years of my career, if not more, to be frank, right? So I didn't really have that money, but I would just do it, you know, because it was the thing I was pursuing, and I'm really terrible with money. So that's another reason I would do it. But, you know, at the beginning, you just gotta fucking throw all the spaghetti on the wall and make it happen. Now, do I think that if we lived in a fair world where art was valued, that you should make struggling playwrights pay you fucking $35 to submit to your festival in Connecticut? No, I think that's bullshit, and I think it's elitist, and I think it's crap. But I have both opinions. I think that, and I also think, yeah, but every theater institution is struggling like a motherfucker right now. I mean, CTG just shut down, right? The theater world is in real danger right now. Real danger. And they just need to get money from somewhere. And should they pilk their fucking artists, especially the ones that they're going to reject? No. But I understand why they're doing it, you know? It's just to survive, because this country doesn't value art. We don't live in a system that says, oh, artist, here is a very nice house for you to continue your thing, right? Like, it's just not the country we're in, very, very sadly, yeah.
But at the same time, because, I mean, look, I mean, sometimes people think their art is gold, and sometimes the art is actually shit. So
of course.
It's not that we don't value it. It's just maybe that particular piece isn't that good.
Oh, of course. I mean, it's like whenever I hear someone say like a blanket statement about a kind of theater, right? Like, I hate Shakespeare. Well, no. And they'll be like, it's so bad. It's like, well, most theater is really bad because theater is really hard to do. I mean, when I was an actor, I'm going to pull a number out of my ass. It may or may not be accurate, but I feel in my soul like I did like 60 plays or something like that, right? Of them, probably 4 were really good. 5 were good, and the rest were really bad. Varying degrees of shit, right? But, you know, that doesn't mean that our culture shouldn't respect and value the work that goes to try to entertain people at a high level, right?
Sure.
Like, those are not, you know, I think both those things are true. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Was there anything that you submitted to that was a great surprise that you got into and was like, oh, that was well worth the money. I'm so glad I did that.
No, I mean, it was only worth the money, quote unquote, if then a reading came from it or if a production came from it, because that happened.
Sure.
And that changes your life in the course of your career, right? I mean, playwriting led to me being a screenwriter, that led to me writing television, right? That changed my financial reality and the ability to write more than when I had to have 3 day jobs, right? So it's all worth it, but you know, it feels best when they like you.
Sure.
And they say, sure, come to our theater. We actually want to give you 3 days of rehearsal to work on your play. Then any amount of money I paid was worth it, I guess, you know? Does it make sense?
Yeah, 100%. Did you ever submit where it's like, oh, $25 and I can win 500? Or,
yes.
Okay. Did you?
Yeah, and I have won things like that in the past and also submitted and never heard from those people ever again, you know?
Right.
But again, it's theater. The amount of money you make is so small. Like, you know, especially when you're 25, $500 is awesome and it's great. When you're a parent of 2 children and a wife and you have a mortgage and you have cars and things, $500, like, that's not, it's just kind of a high five stipend. You know, my friends and I used to call them that in theater, right? But that's not why I playwright. I don't playwright for money, you know, it's just because if that's why you're playwriting, I will say to your listener who's doing that, this is the wrong profession. Sadly, you don't make money playwriting. There's like 5 people who do, you know, like an actual living where you could like, does that make sense? Yeah.
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 One of the reasons that we got connected is because you have something that's premiering or it's about to premiere, right?
Yes. I have a play called Crabs in a Bucket. That's about crabs that actually live in a bucket. And it's being done at the Echo Theater Company. It premieres July 15th. Alana Dietz is directing, who's amazing and one of my favorite directors in LA. And the cast is really spectacular. Xochitl Romero, Ana La Madrid, Michael Sturgis, and Jordan Hull are the 4 crabs in the play. And if you use the code CRABBY, you get $17 tickets on the Echo Theater Company's website. And we run July 15th through August something. I don't remember.
You heard it here first.
Yeah.
So the reason why I bring it up.
Mm-hmm. Did I force a plug? I forced a plug. I shoved it in there.
No, we trust me. We were going to get into it one way or another. So I want to know, because we were just talking about money and making it and stuff like that. And so you've got this premiere, LA premiere coming. Is it world premiere? Yes.
It's a world premiere. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So what's this process? How did this come about? What you wrote this play, Crabs in a Bucket, and I'm gonna unpack this, by the way.
Yeah.
But you wrote this play, and now it's premiering. What was that process? How did it get found? Was it through an agent? Let's talk about this.
So I will say I have a theater agent. 99% of my plays that have happened are not through an agent. Like if you're a playwright out there and you're starting out, like you submit, like go out there, do not wait for an agent. Honestly, most theater agents don't have that much power. Also, getting anything programmed right now is a miracle. And the fact that Crabs in a Bucket is being done is a miracle. And I owe it to Alana Dietz, the director. So this play is about 5 years old.
Okay.
And it was gonna world premiere with my theater company, our theater company, Ammunition Theater Company in LA. And then a global pandemic hit. I don't know if you remember that.
No,
it's fine. Yeah.
Okay.
Fake news. Anyway, but some people think it happened. But so there was a pandemic, and then that production just didn't happen. And then AMO decided not to program it in the following season. And then I got a phone call from Alana Dietz, who is someone I've wanted to work with for a long time. I had sent her Crabs, 3 years ago or something to read.
In an envelope?
I email.
It's a bad joke.
But I will say, no, I like that
clowning.
joke. You know why I like that joke? Because I love when you hear stories from like the 70s or 60s in New York, and people are like, I just went door to door to the agent's office and I handed them my, I never got to do that. I never just got to be like, hello, Mr. Blah, blah, blah. Here's my play. Please read it. Like, what was that? That was a fucking wild time. What a fucking fun thing to do. But so I did that with Alana, and she liked the play. And then one day, Chris Fields, who runs the Echo, called me and said, hey, so Alana Dietz is very insistent that I produce this play. I read it. I really like it. We're going to do it in the next season. Are you cool with that? And I was like, yes, of course. I'm thrilled. I can't, wow. That's how that happened. Yeah.
And so is there a high five stipend behind that?
There is a high five stipend that I'm getting, which is great. But again, I only share this. I'm so grateful to have my play done. But what I'm going to get in return from this production is not money, right? But it leads to money, by the way. I will say this, like my last play, The Play You Want, I had people in LA who have the opportunity to hire you to write movies and TV come and see that play. And then it led to those kinds of opportunities. Okay. And those opportunities pay well, right? So you can't think of a play as like, what will they pay me and what does that mean, right? One, it's going to feed the fuck out of your soul, which is the most important thing. And then two, like you get to share a deep personal thing with your theater community. And that's everything. And then, yeah, in LA, what's cool is some people who come see your plays also then go, hey, you want to come write a movie with me? And that's really fun and cool, Yeah.
Okay, so play's called Crabs in a Bucket.
Uh-huh.
About 4 crabs in a bucket.
Yes. My titles are on the nose, one might say. I wrote a play called, a friend of mine, Brett C. Leonard, who I mentioned earlier, makes fun of my titles of my play because he says they're so on the nose. I wrote a play about someone finding a giant void in their soul. It's called The Giant Void in My Soul. I wrote a play called The Play You Want, which is about the play people want. I wrote Crabs in a Bucket. My titles are, I don't know what to say.
Spot on.
I'll take it. I like that description of them, yeah.
So one of the topics that has come up, as my listeners will know a number of times, is personification of inanimate objects, animals.
Oh, great.
Things like that. So
are you pro or anti? You're anti. I see it in your eyes.
Hugely anti. I just, as all the submissions that I've gotten of, or plays that I've seen between a sperm and an egg, an owner in a haunted house.
Oh, dude, you're not going to like my plays.
Why is the void an actual character in
no,
the void?
No, the void is not, but it's clowns. They're like Fool 1 and Fool 2 are the names of the characters.
Yeah, that's all right.
Yeah, I mean they're crabs, man. Like if you're gonna come see it, they're in a crab costume. Like it's not plushy Crab Town. It's I like to think a little more sophisticated Tim Burton vibes, but I love that shit, man. I love it's theater. Like we should do things that are not a movie. I am usually more interested in plays that do things that only theater can do, right? It doesn't mean I like a living room play. Sure. There's amazing ones, right? I wish I'd written some of those, like Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf? But I love that shit, man. I'm like, yeah, it's fucking crabs in a bucket. It's about crabs. And when you walk into the theater, you're going to be inside a bucket. That's what you're in for, my friend.
And look, and I guess here's the thing. It's not that I'm against any of it. It's that it's usually just very surfacey or it's a sketch.
Well, I hope that you will feel differently about my play. I hope you will think it's about the human condition and it'll be moving to you. It's a deeply personal play. I think it's about, bitterness and about how communities tear each other down. And I think it's there. But,
Well, apparently it is because it's getting produced.
Well, that doesn't mean it's good, bro.
Fair enough.
Just because the play is getting produced. But, I love it. It's fun. I think it's funny, I hope, and these actors are amazing. And I think when you have really good comedic performers, they can be in a crab costume, but they can give it deep, deep humanity, right? I mean, like, you know, Gene Wilder's in a fucking Willy Wonka costume, and, you know, it could be very silly, but he fucking makes it three-dimensional and awesome. You know what I mean?
I wish we could say the same for Johnny Depp.
That's true. But yeah. But Gene Wilder, come on, the greatest of all time. He's like one of my favorites. Yeah.
So did you go through a rehearsal process with these actors?
We are in rehearsals right now. Yeah, tomorrow I'm going to our first designer run-through. But I will say, I've worked on this play for 5 years. I've had readings in New York, in LA. I've had them on Zoom over the pandemic. So the play has been highly workshopped, you know? Mm-hmm. So what I'm trying to do this time around is not be as involved as I usually am in a world premiere, because I hired really amazing people, or the theater did, right? Mm-hmm. I love the actors, and my director's fucking really smart. And so it's been cool because I'm going once or twice a week, which is new for me. And it's awesome to show up and be like, I don't need to be here. These fucking people are awesome. Like, they're making this way better than I ever thought it would be. And I kind of give one or two thoughts and then I leave. And it's nice to let go, right? Like, again, I'm trying to practice that a little more in my art, you know.
Are they giving you notes? Are you doing any rewrites during this process?
Yeah. Alana gave me a great note on a very important moment in the play that I owe her a rewrite on. But yeah, I mean, what I love about new plays is that it's growing. It'll grow until opening night, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, if I had my way, I would rewrite the entire time. Like, again, like how stand-ups do. I would love to be able to do that. Or even be backstage. If Equity wasn't all up in our shit all the time, I'd say, hey, can I like pitch you a different joke every night to a certain actor in the play and see like, does it land? Like, I would love to be able to make plays that kind of, I don't know, malleable, if that's the correct word. Yeah.
You called your director brilliant?
Oh, yeah.
What makes a brilliant director?
Well, I will say, I think being a leader is really important in a director. A human being that commands the respect and who has a clear vision in the room, right? That, again, is allowed to change day to day, but that shows up very confident and is calm. Because so much, especially when I was an actor, you would see there's so many kinds of personalities in the theater. Mm. And if your director is someone whose emotions go up and down, they are not going to be able to keep a cool and calm, collected head when it's 3 days before opening and the costume keeps breaking and the light doesn't work and the music cue's not happening. You need someone who's in control. And I think a lot of that comes from being confident and from doing your work, right? And Alana is also deeply intelligent. Alana's really fucking smart. She's the kind of person that when you're talking to her, you're like, oh, this person is so much smarter than me. And that's great. That's really helpful for an artistic process, you know? But also there's no ego with her. She's just a leader. She's just trying to make this play the best thing it can be, you know?
Are there any aspects of playwriting that you still struggle with?
I mean, all of it. I think the hardest part is watching our industry struggle right now. That is the hardest part of being a theater person, is what's happening, you know? Mm-hmm. Why are people not coming back to the theater? What's gone wrong, right? And by the way, the industry that existed before COVID, I didn't like much. I thought needed a lot of change, especially in terms of representing the country as a whole and what we actually look like. But I am really scared for our industry. And that probably is the part I like the least about playwriting right now, that you have to beg people to go to the theater. Do you remember over the pandemic, there was that funny meme that was like, stay home like your friend invited you to a play?
Yes.
Which was great. I love that meme. I shared it. It made me laugh. But it's also really painful. Like, why do non-theater people hate theater so much? Why are they so afraid to participate or come? Or why are they so unaware of it? Like, it worries me. It really does, because, you know, LA theater is amazing, but let's be honest, most of the people in the audience are other LA theater people. And I worry about that, because we need people who are not involved in the theater in any way to also really want to come and be there. Don't you think?
Yes, but I mean, do you think that that's just because it's LA?
Well, I wish it was that, but if you look at what's happening to theaters all over the country, I mean, Oregon Shakespeare Festival, the Public Theater just got rid of their experimental theater festival, right? That I'm forgetting the name of, but that's very well known and people will know. You know, theaters all over the country are shutting down. It's not just LA, right? There's something happening that probably has been in the works for a very long time, but feels post-pandemic, where a lot of theaters are having a really hard time keeping their doors open. And that really worries me.
Do you think that that plays into property and property values? And, you know, certainly nobody's lowering the rent.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, 100%, yeah.
I mean, North Hollywood Arts District is not NoHo Arts District anymore. Yeah. There's a handful of theaters that are still open. Everything else has been closed.
Yeah. Which sucks. That really, really sucks. No, that's a really valid point. I mean, shit's really expensive, you know. That people were out of work. They don't have maybe disposable income to go to a fucking play and pay $40 to see a show. Yeah, I think all of that. There's so many factors, but your question is what's, you know, is something you struggle with? That I struggle with that a lot is, do I want to be a part of an art form where I'm only preaching to the choir and I'm literally having to beg people to come to the thing that I'm participating in? Does that make sense?
Yeah. It completely. And do you think that maybe, well, I don't know. I mean, we went to a Fringe show. Have you gone to Fringe yet this year?
I have not. So there you go. I'm part of the problem. Yeah. And I like going to Fringe shows. Yeah. Well,
yes and no. I mean, not as far as going, I mean, as far as you being part of the problem. Not necessarily. We went, it was a Sunday or a Monday night, 9:40, sold out play.
Really? Great.
You know, so
that's good.
And then so it's there, but again, I'm going to go back to what you were saying. They're the theater folk.
Yeah,
you know, it's other people going to see the play.
Totally.
You know, that being said, I think that look, I mean, people learned how to stay home.
That's also true. Yeah.
You know, so I don't necessarily know if it's just theaters that are suffering. I mean, there's still restaurants out there that are, you know.
Yeah, I think all that's true. I will say, just to shout out a positive story about a theater company that I think is doing really cool, interesting things. So Bruce Lerman is the artistic director of the Watts Village Theater. On Instagram, it's Waco. I think that's the name of the space. It's Watts Arts Complex something. I'm not going to forget it. But they do an amazing job of getting the community around the theater to come to the theater space, right? So when you go, it's not just theater people.
Sure.
You know, like most of the time when you go to a play there, one, they do really good work, so that's very helpful to get people to come. But two, like, people don't turn off their cell phones. People go to the bathroom with no fucking shame, right? There's no, like, none of this, like, there's none of that attitude that this is an important event you're attending. And the audiences love the plays, and they're really engaged. And you know, Bruce is getting his community to support the work that they're doing there, and I think that's really exciting and something we should all support. By the way,
sure, 100%. And to go back though, where was I going with that?
I don't know.
Yeah,
I brought it up. You asked me what scared me about playwriting.
No, but
they were up for some reason.
Yeah. No, but which is great. It was the inspiring story, but I think that, again, I think that there's smaller markets that do still get, you know,
totally.
Audiences. And this is pre-pandemic as well, but I mean, it's like I had a friend who moved to Lake Arrowhead and did a production there, and people showed up.
Wow, that's
cool. It's George and Martha and say, hey, let's go to the play tonight.
Yeah.
You know, and I kind of think that's, you know, the unfortunate thing about LA is like everybody's in the industry.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to go and see somebody else's play. I mean, you know, I did a brilliant Christmas show for the longest time, and a friend of mine, his wife was the manager at the time for Jim Carrey.
Okay.
As much as he thought this was a brilliant production, she's like, I've seen enough bad theater that no, I'm not going.
I know but that's what's so interesting to me is because people will see, I've seen shitty paintings at a museum. I've seen bad sculptures. I've seen lots of bad movies, lots of bad TV. People will go back to those things, right? Like, what about the theater? because I have a lot of friends, like my boys in Houston, right? I'll refer to them as, right? My guy friends in Houston. They fucking hate theater because they saw one bad play at some point, probably that I made them come to when I was in college, right? And I ruined it for them. And they're like, I don't know, man. Like, when theater sucks, it's real bad. Like, is that what it is? Like, it's just that when theater is bad, like, it's like so horrible to sit in because they're right there. Like, because how many shitty movies do you watch? I watch one a week, probably, you know?
Sure.
And I keep watching, you know? I don't know the answer to that.
I think that theater is a very, look, my family's not going to plays. The only time my family went to plays because I was in it.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
And
Me too, man.
And I probably thought I was brilliant back then.
Yeah.
You know. But they're not looking for stuff like that. And I can, you know, so I'll give your friends a pass that, you know, theater may not be their thing, but at the same time, maybe you just didn't write the play they wanted to see.
Exactly. You're 100% right. No, but you're right about that, right? Like,
but now you didn't. Have they seen it yet?
So my friends, actually, that play, I will say, I think with my non-theater friends, they seem to enjoy that play. But again, it's comedy, right? I think comedy is always a very helpful lending hand, you know? Yeah.
Sure. Now, from the playwriting perspective, though, are there aspects of playwriting itself that you still struggle with? You know,
I think the thing I struggle with the most as a writer, this is to plays also, is, you know, when you're in it for a long time, you start to see sort of, or you tell yourself these stories about the trends that exist in the industry, and you're like, you know, if I wrote a play about an abuelita and her tamales, and I called it the tamales play, it could probably get done regionally all over the country. And if I made it tamales and Christmas, like, man, I could just fucking do that thing. Let me write that thing, right?
Sure.
And that pull to stop being authentic to your voice and the reason that you got into that is something that I think I struggle with. But I will say I haven't written the Abuelita Tamales play, and I hope never to. But that's hard when you realize, like, oh, the kind of thing I like is not the thing that is quote unquote accepted by the establishment of the theater world. And especially when you come from a sort of an oppressed community or another, right? Mm-hmm. You see what is sort of in vogue and you go, I don't think I would ever write something like that, right?
Right.
And I sometimes struggle with my desire to write something else, but I don't know. At the end of the day, I just write what I want to write, you know? And then if it never gets done, I guess it never gets done. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but don't you think that that's what it's about? It's about not writing that. Because don't you find that it's not that those are the things that are successful, but those are the things like, you know, let's take, I hate to go for the obvious, but let's take Hamilton.
Yeah, sure.
You know, it's that, you know, off the beaten path that all of a sudden is what is successful and what drives people to the theater.
Totally. And I will say, I think the reason this is such a big theme in my head is now that I've started getting paid to write in Hollywood, right? Screenplays and TV, you know, the producers come with their notes. Yeah. And they have a way that they think of things that is not maybe coming from the same place that was the person that started writing plays. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%.
It's commerce versus just trying to be authentic to the thing. And I think those people can fuck with your head where you start to doubt yourself because you go, well, but the producer's not going to like that, even though you may really like that, right? And I think that makes you a worse writer because then you are second guessing yourself over and over again, right? To go back to that theme.
Sure.
And so I will say my favorite plays that I've written are plays that I wrote without any worry about any other person in the world. I wrote them for myself. And they were so authentic and I needed to write them. And I didn't think about, will this ever be done or produced? I mean, I wrote a play called fucking Crabs in a Bucket. You know what I mean? Like, I never thought, where crabs literally tried to crawl out of the theater. It's an insane play, right? I never thought it would get done. And yeah, it's just about trying to maintain that sort of, I don't know, Quixote-like approach to writing where you're not thinking about anything else but just the fucking thing, you know?
Do you know, when you sit down to write, do you know what the idea is? Do you know what the concept's going to be when you sit down behind that keyboard or in front of that keyboard?
Yes. Usually what will happen is I'll have an idea in the car or, you know, watching my kid at a park or something. And then I won't start writing until that idea persists. So if I keep thinking about it and I start having like, you know, even like a small smile on my face, like, and I feel kind of impish about it and I get excited, then I'm like, okay, I got to write this thing. But I don't know that it would work for me or not. I've never outlined or anything. I just get to the point where I go, I have to start writing this thing now. And then again, I try to write it as fast as possible. The first draft, which will be bad. Yeah.
So now that you're not locking yourself in for the weekend, how do you, what kind of time frame are you on? So let's say that for those of us that don't have those weekends, because it's a brilliant idea. Hey, I'm going to lock myself up. And now you've got a family, you've got a wife, you've got 2 kids. Now you don't have the luxury of, you know, so let's say you have that 3 hours and you can't just write until you hit end of play.
Yeah.
How does that look?
I wake, you know, it depends. Like this past year, my son was dropped off at school at 7:50 a.m. I drop my son off at 7:50. I go to the coffee shop that I go to every morning at 8 a.m. I get my fucking coffee. I go home. I will usually procrastinate for about 30 minutes to check emails, quote unquote, which means watch all the shit I've mentioned before. And then around 9, it's time to write, you know, and I'll try to write until noon, 1 or 2, with breaks, you know, for food or like to rest your brain. And honestly, from like 9 to 1 or 2, that's my writing time. And then, you know, the truth is that's when you don't have a general meeting or a meeting about the screenplay that you're writing or a notes meeting with producers or, you know, that's the other stuff that you're juggling. But I just schedule it during the day because then I got to go pick up my son or my wife has to go pick up my son and then he comes home. We have a baby at home, by the way. And then that whole fucking thing happens until they go to bed at 8 or 9. And then sometimes I'll still write at night, but that's rare because I'm usually just beat by the end of the day.
Sure. So you write at home.
Yeah.
You don't find that there are distractions at home that prevent you from writing or that you can give into rather than if you were to let me ask you this. Would you find that if you wrote somewhere outside of home, there would be fewer distractions to pull you away from writing? Or do you find that there are just as many, if not more?
No, I will say I do write at home a lot now just because of the way my life is structured. But I actually am probably better at a coffee shop without a Wi-Fi connection. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You know where I am the most productive is airplanes. I wish that an airplane company would like sponsor me to fly around the world for a week so I could write, honestly, finish screenplays, pilots, like, because when I'm on a plane and you have to pay the $20 fucking for Wi-Fi, I don't pay for the Wi-Fi. Sure. And dude, I'm on a plane. I'm like, bring all this shitty red wine you have, sir. And then I just write and I am really productive. I've written a lot of things that I'm really proud of on airplanes, you know? Yeah.
Do you use a publicist or anything to promote your work?
No, I mean, if the theater, like, you know, the way I got in touch with you was through the Echo Theater Company's publicist, Lucy. So, but I don't do any of that. I do have friends who have done it, and it's probably really smart.
Sure.
I just am like, do I pay $2,000 to, you know, I use social media, you know. I'm probably most annoying when a play of mine is going on social media. I imagine that's when most of my friends mute me. But that's the, you know, you got to post and post and post, and it actually works. You know, it gets people to come to your shows.
How frequently do you post? If you're promoting your play, how many times a day? How many times a week?
So usually the disease that I have is I will ask the theater for the event B login, and then I will be checking every single day the ticket sales. And you will know how ticket sales are doing for a play of mine by how often I'm posting. So if you're like, God damn, Bernardo put 9 stories on his fucking Instagram today, that's because ticket sales are low, my friend, and I'm sorry. And the way you can get me to stop posting 9 times a day is to buy a fucking ticket for my play. Yeah, so that's it. There's no thought behind it, really.
Have you gotten published?
No.
Have you tried?
No. I mean, no, but I would love to. It's one of those things. It's weird. There was a moment maybe 2 or 3 years ago where I was like, I've gotten produced a bunch, different places. No one's ever called me. How does that work? I honestly, I'm like, yeah, you know, it's funny. My friend Mondo, who I think I mentioned earlier, he and I were talking the other day, like, how the fuck do you get produced? Like, he's had plays done at like big theaters in New York, not one thing published. I'm like, is that a thing an agent does? I honestly don't know how it happens, you know? So if anybody knows, hit me up on social media after you listen to this interview. I would love to get fucking published. Big time, yeah.
I think we've got a couple episodes where it's covered, and I don't know if that's...
Oh, really?
Yeah. But I can't remember if those are full-length plays that are published or if it's the smaller things that are in anthologies or compilations and things like that.
I've had things like that, but it was because I submitted to a festival that, like, guarantees you one of your short plays is in the book they put out, right? But then I'm like, who buys that fucking thing? Like, I want the Samuel French crabs in a bucket. You know, like, how does that happen? Yeah. I don't know. But if Samuel French is listening, if Monsieur French is out there, I would love for you to fucking publish one of my goddamn plays. That would be cool, yeah.
You'd be surprised how many people buy those books.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm guilty because I produced 7 years of film noir styled one acts, and then
cool.
And it was just like, and I was going to go that route. I was going to sit there and say, hey, look, you know, here's some plays. These were produced. This is what we did. You know, will you go ahead and, you know, publish these? And I was too afraid. They would say, we'll take these.
Yeah.
But we don't want these.
Yeah.
And in my mind, it's like, look, this was the season. This is what we did. Every single one of these plays is worthy of being in this book.
Yeah.
And so that's just kind of what I did. And then and same thing with the Collegiate Playwright Festival.
That's cool.
You know, and yeah, look, they're self-published. I'm not gonna deny that, you know, but they are, and they're out there.
But who cares, dude? Because like my grandmother was a poet in Mexico, right? Sure. Self-published. You know how important those books are to me? Like I read those books all the fucking time. Like they're in my house. I can share them with my kids. It's like, you know, I mean, you were saying that, and in my head, I got like an idea. I was like, I should just self-publish my plays, put them on my website, call it like 100%. Samuel Frances, you know, and then just fucking put them out there. And then at least like if people want to buy them, like why don't I do that? I should fucking totally do that. Like I love when like musicians just have their fucking album on their website, and they're like, why am I waiting for Sam French? Like I just had this thought. I think I'm going to do it.
Please, by all means.
Someone says, we're in business. Let's do it.
I'm happy to help you and guide you through that. No, because here's the thing, and this we've come up through this a few times, and I think this is the great thing about technology right now. In so many different aspects, I think that we've finally gotten to a point where the gatekeepers are falling by the wayside. Yeah, there's so much accessibility right now that you don't have to wait for somebody else to give you permission to do what you want to do.
Totally,
and that can be anything. That could be making movies, writing plays, producing theater, and that's how we kind of started.
That's cool, man.
My ex had always wanted to do. Nobody can see the posters that I've got on the wall, but we
Private Eyes,
Private Eyes, and The Maiden's Prayer by Nikki Silver. So Private Eyes, my ex had always wanted to do that play, and it was just like, all right, well let's do it.
Yeah,
and that's why we always said it's like, look, if there's a role that you want to play, quit waiting for somebody else to put you in that role. You know, go buy the rights, get a small black box theater, and stage it. Same thing with your own work.
Well, I'll say for playwriting, I think a decision I made that for a while I was really scared was the wrong decision was I very quickly decided I will let the smallest of theater companies world premiere my play. Because there's this bullshit world premiere crap that is just so antiquated. It's so stupid that, like, you know, well, if you want that play to get done in New York, you better let it die on your laptop for 10 years and hope that one of those does the world premiere, because if not, they'll never do it. Yeah. And I thought, that's dumb. That's a silly idea. World premiere. How important do New York theater audiences think they are that I must be the first in the world to have seen it? It's so ridiculous. So I started saying, you know what? If fucking the tiny theater in Houston, Texas wants to world premiere my play, I'll say yes in a heartbeat. And that led to me seeing every single play I've written done. Very small scale sometimes, by the way. But I always see my plays done. And also, by the way, all those productions have led to an actual writing career, you know?
Sure.
And I think that goes to your point, which is if I just sat around for Oscar Eustis to decide he likes my plays, I probably would be sitting here being like, yeah, I've written 6 plays. None of them have ever gotten done. And that's who I am, right? But luckily I've had my plays produced a lot because I'm like, fuck it. Also, how nice that someone wants to do my play. Like, yes, you can do it. Like, who the fuck am I to be like, no, theater company in Kentucky? Like, great. It's awesome that you want to do it, you know?
Well, that's a great thing about playwriting as well, in that regard, because I think some people will go ahead and they'll take the screenwriting aspect. And, excuse me real quick, I'm going to...
No. Yeah.
That out there. All right. Sorry, everybody had to see that. Hopefully, you didn't have to hear it. But that's the thing about playwriting is that you're talking about, oh, I have 6 plays that I've written and they haven't been produced, but there are plenty of screenwriters out there who probably have 20 and they've never been produced.
Well, trust me, I'm one of those screenwriters, my friend. Well, you know, I have a lot of screenplays on my desktop that, you know, have not been made, you know, but that requires a lot of money to do it. And to your point about theater, you can, with $500, you can go put on a play, you know? Yeah. I mean, you get into the Hollywood Fringe. Like, I directed a Hollywood Fringe play that my friend Sochi wrote called Spirit Wheel. And, you know, that thing, you know, we fucking put it on ourselves. I don't even know how much it cost us, but probably like $600 total, you know? Yeah. And it was really cool. And it opened a lot of doors for her, you know? It was a cool experience. People came and saw it. They laughed, you know? Yeah.
So I think that there's a great opportunity, but you know, it's funny that though, because you talk about the world premiere and it's the only in New York, but there's a lot of smaller theaters are actually that they want the world premiere now too.
It's so stupid. It's so dumb. If anything, if people who have power are listening to this, let it go. It's the dumbest fucking old school theater bullshit. World premiere, regional premiere, who the fuck cares? Like, it's really dumb. What does it serve? I just do not understand it.
The only thing that I can think of is that if by some remote chance it happens to get published, they want their theater name and their actor name
in some well-front sense. Yeah, but again, who cares? Like, in the grand scheme of life and things, it's so stupid, you know? Yeah. I genuinely think it only exists because it gives rich people boners, honestly, in these cities to think that they're at the world premiere. Like, that's the only reason that it's a thing. I think it's a deeply classist, stupid thing. You know what I mean? Like, I'm like, let it go, man. Like, who cares if other people have seen this before? Like, when I saw The Goat, or Who is Sylvia, which is one of my favorite plays I ever saw. I saw it in Houston. It was probably the 30th production of that play. It in no way lessened my experience of that fucking amazing piece of art. I was just changed forever by seeing it, you know?
Do you so all right, then let me play on that then. Yeah. Do you think it's that that because it says world premiere, it's giving the elite audience a boner to come see it?
Yes.
Or okay. So or do you think it's the ego of the theater production company?
Them too. I think that it gives artistic directors boners too. I think it's about, of all kinds, by the way, sure. But all the boners, any kind of boner. But I think it's I think the disease of the American theater is elitism, and I think it has done a major number on our industry and has destroyed an art form that was meant for everyday people. Yeah. And I think turning it into a thing for rich people to dress up and go see is a horrible, horrible, horrible thing that's happened to what we do. And I think the world premiere is just one of the many terrible side effects of that kind of thing, you know? Yeah.
So what do you recommend to playwrights that are submitting their work and it's a world premiere?
I mean, look, I'm not saying do what I did, because I've never had a play done at the public theater or, one of these big spaces. But I don't know, you write your play so that they can live and breathe and be seen. And God bless you, if you went to one of those, big programs that people care about and you think that those connections will lead to you getting your world premiere in New York and you're going to save your play for 5 years, then cool. That's awesome that you have those opportunities. But most people do not have access to that. Right? It's a privilege to have access to that. And so just throw your plays, send it, email it to people, to your friends. And if someone wants to do it, just do it. By the way, it'll make you a better playwright because then you get to live with your play with an audience around you. And that is a mind trip of an experience, and will only make you a better writer, So I would say release the plays, like go let them happen, Yeah.
Are you still... Because I know we kind of touched on screenwriting and television and whatnot. You're still actively writing plays though?
Yes, but to be honest, much less than I used to. Right now, the play that I'm working on that's new, it was a commission. So that helps push it to the top of the, you know, because you're getting paid for it.
Sure.
And commissions are a place where you get paid a decent amount of money to write a play.
And who was this commission through?
This is through NNPN, and the theaters that are attached to it are Florida Studio Theater in Sarasota and Milagro Theater in Portland. And it's a play about the myth of the Latino vote. And I've been going to Florida and to Oregon interviewing. I'm actually going to Portland this Friday to continue workshopping this play. The play is called The Hispanic, Latino, Latina, Latinx Vote. And it's a satire about a political party trying to reach every single Hispanic blah, blah, blah vote in the country. So I'm writing that, but the reason I'm writing it, honestly, is because I got commissioned, right?
Sure.
Because I'm in a very privileged, lucky place now that, you know, a lot of my writing is screenwriting or television writing. You know, I'm much newer to TV. I've only been in one writer's room, so that's the reality of that. Sure. But for the last 4 years, screenwriting has been like how I make my living. Not right now because we're on fucking strike, but yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Where can people find your work?
So, you know, me, I mean, I have an agent, you know, like if my agent is at William Morris, you can reach out to them and they can give you my plays if you want to do it that way. Honestly, just fucking hit me up on Instagram at Pinche Cubria and I'll send you my plays. They're also on new Play Exchange, which is a great website that people know. And people, you know, productions come from that website too. So that's another thing. If you're a young playwright, put your plays up on that website. It's totally worth it. And people review your plays. It's really cool and it's all positive and it's a nice place. So you can read my plays on there or just hit me up. I'll fucking email it to you. What do I care? Yeah.
How can people reach you? On the socials or website or email? Sure.
I have a website that not much happens on, except now I'm going to self-publish my fucking plays under Samuel Frances. It's happening. I'm not kidding, dude. I'm totally going to do this. So you can go check out the new tab for Samuel Frances in like a month or two. But besides that, if you go Pinche Cubria on Instagram, Pinche and then Cubria, that's me on Instagram. I'm on Twitter, but I have a private account because I hate Twitter and it's the worst thing. Yeah. I'm B Cubria. I honestly just retweet things at this point. After the 4 years of Trump, I've really let go of my Twitter usage. And then I'm on Facebook, Bernardo Cubria, just my name. Yeah.
Are you on the IG?
Yes, Pinche Cubria. That's it. The IG. Yes, yes.
Right.
We say as youths. Yes, the IG. Yes.
The youths?
I'm also on TikTok, but I don't post, so you don't need to follow me on there.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Bernardo, thanks for coming on the Playwright Spotlight.
Thank you. And come to the Crabs in a Bucket. You too, even though you hate plays with crabs in them. This is what we need to do. Right, we need to have a video on your face throughout the play and see if I won you over on your hatred of, what is it specifically that you hate?
Personification.
Yes. So this is the test. Can I bring you over to Personification Landia? Can I? Guys, you got to come and find out. You got to come see the play. Okay, good.
I'm going to be looking forward to this.
Okay,
it's going to be brilliant.
I cannot wait. I can't wait. I'm coming the night you come, dude. And I'm just fucking looking at you the whole time. I'm very excited about this. I like knowing that you hate it.
It's going to be one of these. You're going to sit in front of me like...
Oh, no, I'm sitting right next to you and I'm just going to, like this. Do you like that joke? You see how they're in crab costumes? No, they're crabs. They're actual crabs. It's called Crabs in a Bucket.
This whole theater's a bucket.
Yeah. Don't you get it? The walls are painted orange, buddy. Yeah. So come see it. It's a comedy. You'll like it. Oh, and it's only 72 minutes long. Come on. Come on.
That's a rule in playwriting lately.
It is. I don't know why, but this one is, yeah.
And no intermission.
No. Yeah.
I will be there.
Great. Thanks, man. I really appreciate it, and thanks for having me on.
My pleasure. Thanks for tuning into this episode of Playwright Spotlight. Again, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment down below, and share this video with a friend. If you're listening to us on your favorite podcast platform, be sure to leave a 5-star review and subscribe to the channel. I only cut back to him because he was pointing, and I wanted to give him some, there you go.
Samuel Frances, baby.
If you're listening to us on your favorite podcast platform, be sure to leave a 5-star review and subscribe to the channel. And in the meantime, and until we see each other again, keep writing.